All right, so welcome, guys. We're going to talk about AI again, more of AI, cyber risk, trying to burn down cyber risk. But before we do that, we want to go back a long time ago to where we all want to remember what this is all about, right? This is about a CISO. And then what happened to the CISO is there was so much AI and so many events, and the CISO started going to events, and then I don't know what happened after that. So to begin, I want to invite my partner in crime over here. I'm Gaurav Banga. I'm the founder and CEO of Balbix, and Kris Philipsen. He's the head of Verizon Consulting Services. Kris, his teams, they lead cyber risk assessments. They provide other kinds of cybersecurity advice. And then Kris, I know personally he engages and interacts with senior leaders across the industry, CEOs, CFOs, CISOs, CIOs, and there's a lot of insight that he gets from that. And we have been working together with Verizon for a long time, and we're really excited to be here to talk about cyber risk management and what role AI plays in that. So when we talk about cyber risk management, we're really talking about what can we do to manage the risk of cybersecurity down to acceptable levels, which means what can we do before the fact? What can we do to prepare so that bad things don't happen? And being proactive and to prepare is probably the most important thing that you would do, because if you don't do that, you fail. And so taking this picture that all of you have seen many, many times before, the attack surface, which has become much, much bigger than, let's say, 10, 15 years ago. Now, if you double-click on what this really is saying, and if you say, OK, well, how do we be proactive about the attack surface, then here's this little picture, which almost mirrors the graph that you've seen in investment type cycles around how much money is pouring into cybersecurity. But this is really about the number of software issues, software vulnerabilities that are discovered every year. What is somewhat less known is besides these software vulnerabilities, CVEs, we also have the non-CVE kind of exposures, like your password issues and your misconfigurations in your cloud configuration, or the users who are highly susceptible to phishing. All of those exposures are also there and have been there for a long time, except for the most part, we've forgotten all about them. And they're not addressed by traditional programs. And part of the reason why cybersecurity is hard is because these numbers have just been going to the roof. And in the last 3 years, we have lost control. But this is not the worst thing about cybersecurity. This is not what is the worst thing that makes cyber risk management hard. There's something even more important. So Christoph.
Yeah, and I think what's important as well is if you look at the way that we are remediating vulnerabilities, it's just not working as it should be. And for those of you familiar with Verizon's data breach investigations reports, in the latest report that we released a few months ago, we put some statistics in there around the key exploited vulnerabilities from CISA. And on average, it takes about 55 days to burn down half of those vulnerabilities in an organization from the time that the patch is available. It takes 180 days to get to 20%, and even at 1 year in, you still have about 8% of your vulnerabilities that are remediated. When we go to the next slide, what's interesting there is that attackers don't stop, right? They don't wait for the patches to be available and then they start attacking you, right? The way that it works is we start detecting scans about 5 days in from the CVE being available. So the weaponization happens a lot quicker. And it also means that we need to be quicker at prioritizing and remediating our response efforts as well.
So, I mean, it looks like we have a very slow bicycle, and the adversary has some sort of a faster car, if you will, right? Now, if you kind of look at what we assess, the things that we find out, and do the math, the attack surface is a very, very hard math problem. Because even if you limit it to what we look at today, most vulnerability management programs, most exposure management programs look at, you're looking at about 10 trillion permutations and combinations by which bad things can happen. And these permutations and combinations change every single day. That's how dynamic the attack surface is. And what does this mean? So it means that the odds of knowing whether a particular exposure is important or not, and the vast majority of them are not important, they're just a waste of time, it's a lot more harder than computing the odds of a royal flush. So if you were to try to solve this problem in its full glory, that means if you were to look at the entire attack surface, which you can enumerate today, an average Fortune 500 organization has to analyze about 1/4 of a petabyte every day. And when you translate that into human hours, that's about 4 lifetimes for a 200-person team. I don't know about you guys, but most of us don't have 4 lifetimes every day. And most of us can't afford it either. And worst of all, this is not something that people like to do, staring at petabytes of data, trying to make sense of it with their tools. So what is really happening is that if you do not use something different, if you do not use data science, if you do not use AI, it's like this picture over here. You're leaving money.
Yeah, no, and I think, speaking of this picture, right, and it's funny because obviously it's an AI-generated image. We wanted at least one AI-generated image in a presentation on AI. But, kind of coming back to the reality of it as well is that organizations today are expected to make swift cybersecurity decisions when the world is actually showing that the velocity and the volume of the threat is increasing. At the same time, also the volume of the data that needs to be analyzed to make those decisions is increasing. So you're basically fighting a losing battle if you're leveraging human capital and just human capital investments, right? That's just not scalable and not sustainable. And really the diminishing returns that we see in people throwing bodies at the problem is just not solving it. It's making the problem worse. It's creating gaps in cybersecurity, which then translate into all the breaches you hear about, right? And don't take my word for it. Read the DBIR, the Verizon DBIR report. We've been writing about this for 17 plus years. But the key really is to make sure that you leverage the right data, the right technology, and the right human lens to make those decisions, to have those empirical data points that you can drive your cybersecurity investments on.
So this, the data problem, the AI problem of cybersecurity, it's really one of the 2 problems. The second problem, perhaps even bigger, and I'm going to start with this question. Do they understand us? Do people who are not cybersecurity experts, do they even understand what we are saying? And then, of course, there's the corollary to it, which is that even sometimes we don't understand each other, because it's a very technical field. There are lots of nuances over here. 300-odd TTPs. Anybody over here remember all 300 of them? That's who wants to remember that. We'll look it up. So that takes us to the second problem in cybersecurity, which is the communication problem.
Yeah, communication is a huge problem, right? And it's not just about communication, Gaurav. It's about communicating effectively. And that is really key to any type of business process. And it's the same when it comes to cybersecurity and risk management as well. And when you look at this, right, I've been in board presentations where the CISOs gave a presentation, talked about all of the vulnerabilities that need to be remediated, the additional staff that needs to be added to the SOC, et cetera. And then at the end of the presentation, the CISO walks out and the board members ask, I'm not really sure if I was any better today than I was yesterday, and I'm not really sure if I'm going to be better tomorrow if I do all these things than I am today. So that is a key element there, and I think the key element around communication is that, and we're seeing this across the board, is that there's a profound disconnect from key business leaders, key decision makers, on their comprehension, their assessment, their measurement, and the articulation of cyber risk. And until that's fixed, we're going to start making and continue making decisions that are maybe not helping the problem, but that are maybe making the problem worse as well.
So if there's one thing you want to take away from this, that is that in the world of cyber, In the world of AI for cyber, AI has two uses. One of them is computation, which kind of readily leads to mind. Right, somewhat, I mean, big data problem, let's try to use AI for helping us with that. Second thing is for communication. So we have built this platform, Balbix, and Balbix it's pretty straightforward when you think about it, right? There's a bunch of data, half a petabyte, quarter of a petabyte every day that needs to be put together. It needs to be cleaned out, analyzed, and then you have this thing called visibility, where you can query things, and you have insights, you have actionable insights. Then you calculate risks, you compute your exposures, again, using LLMs and probabilistic graphical models and things that do very nice tensor math and vector math. And then you have your list of next best steps, your risk, your exposure, all of that, you have that. And then what ends up happening is, okay, so you have this information, you have to communicate this thing out, you have to mobilize your stakeholders, you have to get them all to do the right thing. And so this is what it looks like. This is quite literally a brain scan of the Balbix brain. And so on the left edge of this picture is the input, so over here. And on the right edge is the output. Right, so all your cybersecurity tools, your external tools, internal tools, structured data, non-structured data, all of that is ingested into the system. And then on the outside, on the left side, you have your output. And then here, every node in the dot, every bar, that is a data science, an AI model, a data science model that solves a very specific data science problem. And these problems build upon, these solutions build upon each other. So as you move from left to right, you're getting better and better at getting higher and higher quality insights, more actionability out of the system. So for example, one of the dots in here understands what is a particular asset you're looking at, what is a device, a system, whatever it is. And your data can be coming in all sorts of ways, and in order to make a determination of what it is, a bunch of different models, some of them are LLMs, some of them are not LLMs, because LLMs are not the best thing for every problem. These AI models work together, and they produce their votes on what that particular asset might be. It's a desktop, laptop, or is it some sort of a server, or is it an S3 bucket, or something like that. So similarly, there are algorithms that are able to infer vulnerabilities given the software versions installed. And there are algorithms that can infer, that can analyze the TTPs and the controls and the effectiveness of the TTPs and the controls, and ultimately help you find out the risk. So when it comes down to the actual risk calculation, you compute things like this. This is the risk equation. We all know that, likelihood times impact. Likelihood itself is a function of four things: severity, threat, exploitability, and the effectiveness of your controls. Impact is about how important those assets are. What is the time to recover in case you're compromised? And this cyber risk quantification business, this is not a new thing. In fact, Christoph, you've been doing this for a long, long time.
Yeah, no, and I think, for a long time we've been doing and leveraging scenario-based calculations when it comes to cyber risk, right? An if-then scenario. If this happens, then that may potentially, ensue. And we all know that there's pros and cons of the models, but if you kind of look at some of the challenges that exist with the scenario-based models, number one, it's subjective, right? It depends on who answers the questions when it comes to the model. Number two, it's often padded with assumptions, right? If X and Y are true, then Z may occur, right? How do you know that that's necessarily going to happen? And then the third model, or the third challenge there would be around the data and the point in time view, right? The assessment might be as good as the time that assessment was done. It's not continuous, and we all know that there's drift times, and that posture changes over time. So that makes it very challenging to be able to actually go in front of a board and say, I'm basing myself upon someone's opinions with padded assumptions, and this is what my outcome is, and based upon that, these are the cyber investments that I'm looking for. So fortunately, there's a better way, and that is by doing evidence-based, AI-powered type of risk quantification. And that really takes some of the certainly the subjectivity out. It also helps with the point-in-time view and addressing that's a continuous type of approach. And what it also does is it helps with that communication and articulation aspect, because you're no longer just talking about these vulnerabilities need to be addressed, these control gaps, and it might not be CVEs, it might be other vulnerabilities as well, but you're starting to translate that into dollars and cents, which is really a lot of the things that the decision makers are driving their decisions on.
So once you have dollars, and you can go from dollars to drivers of risk and drivers of risk to dollars of risk, I mean, you now have this currency that everybody understands. So everything, just about everything becomes easier. Going from global next best steps to tickets, seamless, prioritization of tickets based on dollars. Explaining what your program is doing or not doing, what's the ROI of your controls or your projects, becomes easier because you're leveraging off a language that everybody understands. Now, I'm going to shift gears over here a little bit. One thing I noticed, that in any talk that I go to, about half the audience is looking at the speaker and at the slides, and the other half is looking at their phones, right? And I mean, yeah, it's just normal. I mean, I do it too, so there's nothing wrong with it, right? And one of the things about the phone is, like, what is the phone? The phone is your assistant. So everybody needs an assistant. And what do you have an assistant for? Since cybersecurity is so complex, you need your assistant to keep tabs on everything that you don't have time to track. Your assistant, particularly with ChatGPT and Google search before that, is your thinking partner. Right? This is where all your half-baked thoughts go. That's where your search history is so private. And then, hopefully, for those of you who also use your phone to take care of stuff automatically, it can become a way to get stuff done. So that's exactly what we need in cybersecurity to help with communication. Everybody needs a cybersecurity AI assistant on your phone. So that is what this is the other side of what we have built, which is on the communication side, not only do we quantify, but we make it super easy for people to figure things out. So, and this is not just being able to talk. This thing has to understand you. So here's an example. Today is, well, I'll take you back to December of 2021, and today is the day when Log4j hit the industry or the world. CISOs around the world had a certain perspective. So, and IT people, cybersecurity people around the world have a slightly different, the operational people had operational perspective. And you have the same question. And what you expect your assistant at that point of time to be able to do is give you an answer in context, not just what ChatGPT would give you, but also in terms of what your environment has, what it doesn't have. And you can generalize this problem to any time you're sitting in here, you have a question, you can ask about next best steps, and you get a very specific answer, which is at the appropriate level of detail in the appropriate language that might be appropriate for your role. And you want this system to take care of all the things like, hey, create the dashboard, dispatch your tickets, just like that, just like what I said, create the dashboard, dispatch your tickets. And all the heavy lifting of automation and all that can be done behind this. So if you're interested, this is not only possible, this is a new functionality that we released today. We actually announced it to the world today. It has been used by some of our customers in a private evaluation for a little while. And it takes the latest and greatest in AI technology, RAG models, multi-agent architectures, and puts this all together. So if you're interested, you can find out more about it. So now we can get back to, so once you have all of these technologies collected, what does an AI-powered cyber program look like? It's very different. What is it? So the first thing, as we all know, you cannot protect what you don't know about. So phase one of an AI-powered program is about gaining visibility. And over here, I'm going to turn over to Christoph, because this is his area.
Yeah, no, thank you, Gaurav. And I think the key there that you're talking about as well is to be able to make sure that the analysts that are looking at this can spend more time articulating and communicating, because that's oftentimes where we find the disconnect. And oftentimes they're communicating the wrong data, or data that's missing, and that makes obviously for wrong decisions, right? So what we found from leveraging AI-powered cyber risk assessments, leveraging the Balbix technology as well, is that we can do exponentially more assessments with the same amount of assessors, right? Because we're leveraging APIs to pull in data, we're leveraging AI to be able to rationalize some of that data a lot quicker, and that way the assessors on my team can spend a lot more time looking at that data and communicating and articulating that to the stakeholders, as opposed to being bogged down into assessment hell, right, pretty much. So that's a key thing there. And I think from a decision maker perspective as well, as we're providing a lot more data to them to be able to make decisions upon that empirical data. We're bringing the dollars and the cents into the conversation, which makes it a lot easier for them to make those decisions.
All right, and once you have visibility and next best steps, you go into just burn down phase, where you essentially eliminate your backlog. You break up the enterprise into little pieces, like 5 BUs or 100 sites. Each one of them has next best steps, which are computed from the main set of next best steps. You follow the reaction, and based on the calculations that have been done a priori, you get to a better place. And after that, you get into the daily grind, which is as new risk items arrive, you don't have a backlog. You just have to make sure that you handle them in a timely fashion so that we have acceptable risk. So how well does this work? It works incredibly well. A lot more visibility. Your MTTR or MTTM shoots down sharply. You can save a lot of money from consolidation, productivity, all of that. And there are other benefits as well.
Yeah, I would say the other two benefits that I think come to mind are kind of at the intersection of risk and compliance lie your regulatory requirements, right? And a lot of that can certainly impact the way that you're doing business. So being able to determine the materiality of potential breaches or potential impact is really key, and that's very powerful. Number two, a lot of organizations are really driving for cyber insurance right now because the breaches are going up, so they need to find a way to be able to do risk treatment in that space. Cyber risk quantification, leveraging especially AI, is definitely the key component in all of that as well.
So what do you take from here, right? As you prepare for AI native cybersecurity, which you have to do, otherwise you're leaving a lot of money on the table, reframe every cybersecurity problem as an AI problem, or a data problem, a computation problem, or as a communication problem. And you'll find that the framework goes a long, long way. Then get knowledgeable. Take a course, and we offer one, on how to get ready for this AI stuff. And then understand the limits of what the current AI can do and not do, and make sure your human assets, your human capital becomes an expert in that. Well, with that, thank you very much.
Thank you.